Hello, hi, my name is Sylvia Lovina Chidi, and my presentation today is about GDPR. So, what is GDPR? GDPR is otherwise known as the General Data Protection Regulation, and it is a legal framework that sets rules for the gathering and handling of personal information of individuals within the European Union. And many of you are already aware of this, but the GDPR actually came into effect across the EU on the 25th of May 2018. A lot of you may be wondering, okay, yeah, GDPR, we need to be compliant, but you don't actually know the reasons behind GDPR. And the two main reasons is one, it gives EU citizens more control over their personal data. For example, if I want to find out about what information a company holds on me, I can write them and say, I need this information within this specific time frame, within a week. That company has to take me seriously now that GDPR has come into effect. And the second reason for GDPR is that it simplifies the regulatory environment for business in the European Union. The next question on everyone's lips will be, okay, who does GDPR apply to? Some organizations outside the EU might think, I'm not affected. So, just to get clarity on this, GDPR applies to any organization operating within the EU and any organizations outside of the EU that do businesses or do business and offer goods and services to customers and businesses within the EU. So, how do you get compliant? What is GDPR compliance? It's very important for every organization to ensure that they're compliant, and this means that organizations have to ensure that personal data is gathered legally and under strict conditions. I've seen many websites out there that are still not complying. They are getting information from individuals. Some individuals are not even aware that that information is being acquired. They're getting people to sign forms, and some users are not aware that that is personal information they are releasing to the organization. So organizations must make sure that that information is acquired legally and under strict conditions. And those who gather and handle that personal data will need to protect it from misuse and abuse, as well as to respect the rights of data owners. If they don't do that, if these businesses don't do that, they face consequences which could be in form of heavy fines. And those heavy fines can also affect their reputation. And a lot of people are not aware or fully aware of what personal data is under the GDPR. Some people think, personal data is just the name. No, it's more than the name. It's information such as your name, your address, your photo, your date of birth. Even an IP address can be personal data because that IP address can identify where that person works or where they can be found. And other personal data includes biometric data, which could be, your eye scan, it could be your fingerprint, anything that is biometric data which can be used to identify an individual. So, what is a GDPR breach notification? A lot of people will be asking themselves that. And one of the things I want to say is that since GDPR came into force on the 25th of May 2018, it is compulsory for all organizations to report certain types of data breaches. Any breach which involves unauthorized access to personal data or loss of personal data will need to be reported to the relevant supervisory authorities. And not only that, organizations also need to inform individuals affected by the breach. So, for example, in your organization, if some personal data has been tampered with internally or externally, you need to report that. If you have customers that have been affected by this breach, you need to contact them and let them know. If the public has been affected, if you're a bank and some hackers have gone onto your website and got information, you equally need to let the public know. So just to summarize it, organizations have to report any breaches which affect the rights and freedom of individuals and can create an environment for discrimination, damage to reputation, financial loss, loss of confidentiality, or any other economic or social disadvantage. And that report needs to be done within 72 hours of the breach. When you report it, you have to give some information as well. You equally need to let customers know what you're doing to reduce the impact of that breach. So it's very, very important to report that notification within 72 hours. I'm going to just very quickly summarize the main things to consider in your organization to ensure you are compliant, GDPR compliant. Experienced organizations that can pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds to consultants, they're fine. But if you're a small organization, you're not sure whether you have taken all the right steps to be compliant, then I will just set you in the right direction. The first thing you need to consider is appoint a data protection officer. But if you have budget constraints, it's possible that someone has already in your organization has been dealing with data. You can give them that responsibility. So you can give them the GDPR data responsibility. Secondly, you may also want to consider doing a GDPR audit, because if this is unfamiliar territory, you're not sure if you're doing all the right things to be GDPR compliant. 25th of May has passed, but have you put everything in place to ensure you're compliant? It's still worth doing an audit, and it's worth chasing a cyber essential certification as well. And this is another audit that's done on your network infrastructure, your IT infrastructure, to make sure you have all the things in place to protect personal data. The third thing you need to be doing on a regular basis, it shouldn't be a one-off, it should be regular. Ensure your staff are well trained and informed regularly. New staff should be trained immediately. Immediately a new member of staff starts, you should have something in place to tell them about data privacy, to teach them about your data procedures and policies and processes before you expose them to data handling. And no matter what type of security incident you have, even if it's a laptop has been stolen but there was no data on it, or a mobile phone was stolen but there was no data on it, still record your security in the incidents. They will always protect you. Record as much information as you can. Have dates. Have a detailed description where possible. So there is an organization called the ICO.org.uk, and it has 12 steps that you can take to ensure that you are compliant. And ICO again is one of the supervisory bodies that is available when you want to report a breach. And I'll just very, very quickly again go through their 12 steps. I've spoken about that already in my presentation. But one is awareness. You need to make everyone aware of GDPR in your organization, right down to, administrators. Everyone in your organization should really be aware of it. The decision makers. You should also make sure that you document the information you hold. So if you have personal information on customers, any kind of customer, try and make sure that you document what you hold. You should have your privacy notices in place. Make sure you publish them on your website. This is very important. So almost every organization now has a website. Make sure you have a privacy notice published on your website so that all users are aware of how you're dealing with personal data that you collect, especially on your website. Um, Individual rights. You should be uh, aware of all the procedures you have in your organization and make sure that they uh, cover all the rights of the individuals that you have. Have policies uh, to show what will happen when an individual leaves the organization or you no longer need a particular personal data or a database of information. How do you get rid of that information, still protecting the individual? Um, all your procedures should really be updated, including your subject as access requests. Remember what I said about documenting? You should also document your subject access requests. What is subject access requests? Well, basically, it's when people say, I want information about me. So have, a log, record that. Uh, when did that person make the request? Record when you released information and what information you released. So I suggest you familiarize yourself with those 12 steps and get familiar with them. Now, I just want to make an emphasis about the data protection officer because some people think, hang on, when do I need to appoint a data protection officer and when am I exempt from it? So I just want to make it very, very clear that it's actually compulsory for some organizations to appoint a data protection officer. Under the GDPR framework, an organization must appoint a data protection officer, otherwise known as a DPO, especially where the organization participates in large-scale processing of special categories of data or large-scale monitoring of individuals, such as behavior tracking, or that organization is a public authority. There is an excellent website on my presentation if you want more detail about that or more detail on any aspect of GDPR. Just click on that link and it will take you and explain more about it. I have this slide here which shows you a cyber essentials audit. You can do it yourself. You can basically go online and pay about 300 and something dollars. I don't know if they've increased it, and you can define a scope. That scope tells the organization what kind of audit to carry out on you, and you can see the screen is very easy. You define your scope. Lots of questions will be asked in a questionnaire. You need to answer those questions. Then you need to schedule a scan. Then there will be a final question and maybe a telephone conversation with Cyber Essentials. And then finally, when you've made all your corrections and you are compliant, you will get your certification, which is valid for a year. It's a yearly exercise, and it's recommended for different areas like firewalls, secure configuration, user access control, malware protection, and patch management. So you can define any of these things in your scope. I've already explained that you have to report a GDPR under 72 hours, but just in case you can't, then you must explain why there has been a delay. And I'm just giving an example on this slide about the type of information that's required when you report a breach. You need to give a description, you need to explain how many individuals are concerned, you need to explain the number of personal records that are concerned, you need to give the name of your data protection officer, you have to give a description of the breach that's taking place and the actions as well that you intend to take to reduce the risk. There are so many examples of GDPR breaches. I've given some. Data files on your network have been accessed by a hacker through your router. Such kind of breach needs to be notified immediately to the ICO within 72 hours. Um, some of you might want to know, how can I report it? Who do I report it? Who do I report a GDPR breach to? It's very simple. You call ICO 0303-123-1113, or you can go to the ICO website. They have an online form. So my slide will show you a link to the form and you can report it there. And it's just the same basic information as well. So yes, you can report a breach kind of online. You still need to download the form and fill in all the details and send via email. So yes, you can. And last of all, food for thought. I've covered almost everything, but the terminology data controller. What do you think a data controller is? And just in case you don't know, a controller is a person, public authority, agency, or other body which alone or jointly with others determines the purposes and means of processing of personal data. That person is known as a data controller. So, thank you very much. I hope this has been very exciting for you as it has been for me. Thanks.